Do you think it's right for people to sell World War II era Nazi memorabilia and make profits from it, including Adolf Hitler coins, Hitler Youth badges, flags, swastikas, all this kind of stuff that was used in the Second World War during the most horrendous genocide that the modern world has ever known? Is it right for people to be selling these products on Gumtree and making a profit? Currently they can do that. Apparently eBay, Gumtree's parent, they do ban this sort of stuff. They call it offensive content. But according to news.com.au, Gumtree doesn't explicitly name Nazi memorabilia in its prohibited items. Therefore, it is being sold on Gumtree. But there are also other people, private dealers, who are selling this stuff. And I think it's repugnant that they could make profits on this gear that is so connected with these horrendous events. What do you think? 92211882. Dvir Abramovich is chairman of the B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation Commission and joins me now. Good afternoon, Dvir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. It's amazing that people, A, want to sell this and B, want to buy it, frankly.
Look, there's a lucrative trade in Nazi memorabilia. It's a global multi-million-dollar industry, and over the last few years, we've seen a flood of Nazi paraphernalia being hawked for sale to the highest bidder in online auctions. Just to give you a few examples, like founder of the Gestapo and Nazi leader Hermann Göring's yacht fetched $270,000, Hitler's binoculars $53,000, and Nazi red wine with Hitler's image $7,000. So clearly there's a market for this disturbing and ghastly material, and we've taken the position that we as a society, as a community, have a responsibility to confront this head-on and close the door on this revolting phenomenon that, in essence, legitimizes Hitler's brutal extermination program and makes items associated with the Nazi regime seem cool and fashionable.
It's kind of ghastly that you can merchandise genocide like this, even this long after it. And tell me, how do the survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants feel when they see these items being sold on the open market?
I think they're devastated. I mean, just think about if you're a victim of the Holocaust. Now, you've lost your family, you've lost your parents at the hands of the Nazis, and suddenly you read that on Gumtree or other auction sites, they're selling this Nazi paraphernalia, which really, if you think about those items, they glorify the extermination of millions of people. They promote racism, white supremacy, and they represent genocide and racial intolerance. And I think they're completely out of step with Australia's values of respect, inclusiveness, and multiculturalism. So I find it deplorable that, as you said, 7 decades after this unprecedented horrors of the Holocaust, you got businesses who are actually making money from the symbols of pure evil and showing zero respect to the victims.
I think you're right. It is banned in Austria, France and Germany to sell this kind of memorabilia. Why do you think we haven't taken the step here, and should we?
Well, I think that sometimes companies here, and we've seen this with auction houses in Canberra. We've reported on these kinds of materials being sold in trash and treasure markets, in local markets. I think that these companies don't really understand that nothing in life happens in a moral vacuum. And when you allow these items to stay, you contribute to the social acceptability of racism and bigotry. And also, I think there's a lack of understanding that anti-Semites and white supremacists are emboldened by the knowledge that they can continue to exploit this new technology to demonize Jews, to hurt survivors, but to keep selling these items that inflict grief and suffering on the victims. So it's time for companies, internet companies, giant internet companies like eBay and Gumtree, to walk the walk. And to say, in one voice, we are not going to allow Nazis or racists or any other radical groups to either buy those nasty materials or to offer those nasty materials. So Gumtree really shouldn't be a hothouse and a cesspool of racism and xenophobia and bigotry.
Well, I guess particularly at this time in Australia's development, we are having an intense debate which has racist overtones, and there are concerns about ethnic minorities, and you wonder at this time whether to allow this sort of stuff is not helpful in that context.
I think that's beautifully put. I think that these kinds of incidents, and I'm very grateful that you've actually taken the time to highlight it on your show, these kinds of incidents remind us that it's time for everyone to reassess their standards, to look into their heart, and to reflect on the principles that guide them. And I think Nazi memorabilia really tests our values and contravenes the moral code that we have always cherished. And internet companies, including Gumtree and eBay and Amazon, should be vehicles, and Facebook should be vehicles that champion social values and human rights and build a civil society online, rather than be facilitators for the proliferation of hate. And you're right, we are living now in a time of a dramatic rise in intolerance and hate speech. And to have such poisonous, disgusting materials only helps to fan the flames of prejudice and extremism. So,
yeah, there is a difference between memorabilia and historical artifacts. I guess, how do we preserve enough of this stuff so we don't forget what happened before without crossing that line into memorabilia and profit-making and so forth?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. My view is that these precious items, these really belong in museums because they are witnesses to history.
Yes.
And when you have them in a museum, in an exhibit, you can provide young people, students, but even adults with the right context. And we all have a moral responsibility to preserve those items. There's the story of those who refused the lure of money. In 2000, the head of the War Museum in Canada refused to sell a bulletproof Mercedes used by Hitler. And that car would have brought in millions. Now, he lost millions in potential funds, but in my view, he retained his morality and principles.
What's worth more, I guess, is for the individual to reflect upon.
Absolutely, and every single person has a role to play in combating intolerance and bigotry and racism. And we do so by, in one voice, saying we're not going to make the sale of Nazi memorabilia, the profiting from blood money, which is the way I see it, acceptable in Australia.
All right, you've put the case very well. Thanks for your time, Dvir.
Appreciate the time. Thank you.
That's Dvir Abramovich, Chairman of the B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation Commission there on the sale of World War II Nazi memorabilia through Gumtree and other means. It's disgusting. It's war porn. It should never be seen. And the people who are profiting from it, well, that's just blood money. It is just blood money. He's absolutely right. And it's the last thing we need is people to dress themselves up in the regalia of hatred, intolerance and bigotry.